In this video, we're going to discuss about Cauchy sequence. So ito yung definition ng Cauchy sequence. A sequence A sub n of real numbers is called the Cauchy sequence if for any positive epsilon, there must exist a natural number n such that as m comma n becomes greater than or equal to large N, this implies the distance between A sub m and A sub n becomes smaller than epsilon. Okay? So, ano yung sinasabi ng Cauchy sequence? Ang gusto niyang sabihin, pwede tayong pumili ng very very small epsilon such that from that epsilon, pwede tayong makakita ng natural number n such that after that natural number n, yung sequence or yung terms ng sequence becomes very very close together. Okay? So, halimbawa, ito yung ating graph para ma-imagine natin. So, let's say nandito yung ating terms ng sequence. So, let's say magkakalayo siya and arbitrary siya. Then, after large N, yung susunod na terms dyan becomes very, very close together. So, nagdidikit-dikit siya. Okay? So, ganun lang kasimple yung ating Cauchy sequence. Okay? Now, paano naman mag-prove kung ang given sequence ay Cauchy? So, let's proceed to our example. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Show that A sub n defined by n over n plus 1 is Cauchy. So, magsisimula muna tayo sa discussion. So, for our discussion, so for any positive epsilon, dapat daw mag-provide tayo ng natural number n such that for all n m greater than or equal to that natural number, dapat yung distance between the terms A sub n and A sub m must be smaller than epsilon. Okay? So, dito tayo magsisimula. Okay? So, kailangan masatisfy natin yung condition na to na ito ay less than epsilon, tapos dapat makapag-provide tayo ng natural number n na kayang isatisfy to. Okay? So, bago tayo magsimula, without loss of generality, i-let natin na yung m ay less than or equal to n. So, ibig sabihin yan, hindi na natin kailangan ipakita yung case na yung small n ay less than or equal sa m kasi same lang yung magiging process ng ating proof para doon. Okay, so ito lang muna, ito na lang ang ipapakita natin. Okay, so let's start with the absolute value of A sub n and A sub n. So, absolute value of A sub n minus A sub m, this is equal to absolute value of n over n plus 1 kasi ang ating A sub n ay defined by n over n plus 1 minus, so kung m naman yung subscript, magiging m over m plus 1 naman yan. Okay? Then, this is equal to, ipag-subtract natin yan, so cross multiply, so n times m plus 1, quantity m plus 1, minus m times quantity n plus 1 over the quantity n plus 1 times the quantity m plus 1. Okay? So, this is equal to, this is n times m, so mn plus n times 1, that is n, minus m times n, so mn, negative m times 1, so negative m, over quantity n plus 1 times quantity m plus 1. So, makakancel yung mn kasi mn minus n, mn, tapos matitira ay n minus m. So, this is equal to the absolute value of n minus m over the quantity n plus 1 times the quantity m plus 1. Okay? So, since yung m natin ay mas mababa or equal sa n, so kapag pinag-minus natin yan, let's say mas mababa yung small m natin, then ang mangyayari, positive yung lalabas dito. Okay? Okay? Sa fraction natin. Kasi nga mas mababa yung m. So, what if hindi tayo mag-minus ng m? So, ang ilalagay lang natin ay n. So, ano ang mangyayari sa fraction? Ang mangyayari sa fraction, possible siya na maging mas malaki. So, this is less than or equal sa ating absolute value of n over the quantity n plus 1 times the quantity m plus 1. Kasi wala tayong binawas sa n. Unlike dito, meron tayong binawas which is m. Okay? Now, so, let's say, tanggalin naman natin yung n tsaka n plus 1 at ang ilagay lang natin sa numerator ay 1. So, anong mangyayari sa fraction? Ang mangyayari sa fraction, lalo pa siyang lalaki. Kasi, yung n over n plus 1 ay less than 1. Mas malaki kasi yung denominator, which is n plus 1, kaysa dito sa numerator. So, kapag ang ginawa natin, 1 na lang yung nilagay natin dito. So, ang mangyayari sa ating fraction, mas lalaki siya. Okay? Kasi mas malaki mababawasan yung denominator kaysa dito sa numerator. So, this will be less than absolute value of 1 over m plus 1. Okay? And our goal, this absolute value of a sub n minus a sub n dapat less than epsilon. So, as you can see, makakakita na tayo ng natural number n by Archimedean property. I-let natin na yung natural number n ay i-let natin na ang natural number n na sasatisfy ito. So let's say palitan lang natin tong small m ng large n. So let or choose n such that the absolute value of 1 over n plus 1 less than epsilon. Okay? So yan yung gagamitin natin sa proof. So doon na tayo sa proof. So for our proof, let epsilon be greater than 0 and choose large n such that yung absolute value ng 1 over n plus 1, o kahit na wag ng absolute value, so 1 over n plus 1 kasi yung n na yan ay natural number naman, less than epsilon. Okay? So note natin na if n is less than or equal to m, which is yung small m ay less than or equal to n. Okay? Kasi yung ginawa natin nga kanina, yung m dapat ay less than or equal to n. Nilat natin na yung small m ay less than or equal to n. And dito, same idea pa rin siya ng definition kasi according to our definition, dapat yung m tsaka n ay greater than or equal to large n. So, yun naman yung idea nito. Okay, medyo nadagdagan lang, which is yung m ay less than or equal sa n. Okay? Then, absolute value ng a sub n minus a sub m, this is equal to absolute value ng n over n plus 1. Ito yung calculation natin kanina, minus m over m plus 1. This is, i-shortcut na natin dito. This is equal to absolute value of n minus m over n plus 1, m plus 1. And this is less than or equal sa 1 over m plus 1, absolute value of ito na lang, ito muna, n over n plus 1 times m plus 1, and this is less than 1 over m plus 1. Okay, so sinunod lang natin to, yung idea na to. Then since yung n natin, large n natin ay less than or equal sa m, so ibig sabihin ito ay less than or equal sa absolute value of 1 over n plus 1. Okay? So paano nangyari yon? Kasi nga, kung ang large n natin mas maliit kay m, ibig sabihin kapag napunta sa denominator yan, yung m plus 1 na to, which is yung m ay mas malaki sa large n, magiging mas maliit yung fraction na to kaysa dito kasi mas maliit yung natin, large n kaysa dito. Kaya magiging mas malaki tong fraction na to. Or equal, kasi nga or equal tong n tsaka m. Okay, kaya naka or equal. Pero just in case mas maliit yung large n sa m, ganyan ang mangyayari. Mas malaki yung 1 over n plus 1 kaysa 1 over m plus 1. And since yung 1 over n plus 1 ay less than epsilon, kasi itong absolute value, kasi yung absolute value na yan, magiging positive yan kasi yung large n ay natural number. So this is just equal to 1 over n plus 1 and this is less than epsilon. Ito yun. Okay? Then as you can see, na patunayan natin na for all mn greater than or equal to n, the distance between a sub n and a sub m becomes smaller smaller than epsilon. Okay, so this proves that, or therefore, yung sequence natin na n over n plus 1 is Cauchy. Okay, so this is done. So ganun lang siya kasimple. Okay, so for number 2, prove that the sequence 1 over n is Cauchy. So let's start with discussion. So for discussion, dapat for any positive epsilon, dapat mag-provide tayo again ng natural number n such that nasa-satisfy yung condition sa ating definition ng Cauchy sequence. So provide n element of set of natural numbers such that for all n m greater than or equal to n, the distance between a sub n minus a sub n must be less than epsilon. So yan definition ng ating Cauchy sequence. So given this inequality, so dapat ito yung makuha natin. So simulan natin dito. So absolute value of a sub n minus a sub n, this is equal to absolute value of 1 over n minus 1 over m according to definition ng ating sequence na yung a sub n natin ay 1 over n. So pinalitan lang natin 1 over n, 1 over m. So this is less than or equal to absolute value of 1 over n plus absolute value of negative 1 over m by triangle inequality. Okay? And this is equal to 1 over n plus 1 over m. Kasi ito natural number naman yan. So, positive to yung 1 over n. So, pwede natin gawing 1 over n na lang yan. Tapos yung m natin, natural number naman yan. So, positive yan. Tapos since may negative dyan at naka-absolute value, so kapag in-apply mo na yung absolute value dyan, magiging 1 over m na lang yan. Okay? So, ano ba ang goal natin dito? Ang goal natin dito, dapat ito, magawa nating less than epsilon. So, i-let natin na yung 1 over n must be less than epsilon over 2. Okay? So, i-let natin na less than epsilon over 2, which is yung kalahati nito, kalahati ng epsilon. Then, so, magiging ano na siya, magiging, pag i-cross natin yan, then 2 is less than n times epsilon. N times epsilon, and this implies n greater than 2 over epsilon. So, kapag ilalagay mo naman yung epsilon dito, so magiging ganyan na siya, n greater than 2 over epsilon. Then, by Archimedean property, so since ito ay real number, so sigurado tayo na merong natural number na mas mataas dito sa 2 over epsilon, and let's say yung natural number na yon ay yung large n. Okay? So by Archimedean property, so let's choose large n to be greater than 2 over epsilon. Okay, so gagamitin natin to sa ating proof. So proceed tayo sa ating proof. Yan. So for our proof, let epsilon be greater than 0, then choose n such that n is greater than 2 over epsilon. Okay. Then, for all m n greater than or equal to n, yung distance dapat ng a sub n minus a sub m, which is equal to the absolute value of 1 over n minus 1 over m by triangle inequality. Pwede natin paghiwalayin yan, 1 over n plus the absolute value of negative 1 over m, and this is equal to 1 over n plus 1 over m. So inexplain ko na yan kanina dito sa ating discussion pa lang, and this is less than 1 over n plus 1 over n. Okay? So paano tayo nakakasiguro dyan? Kasi nga yung m natin tsaka yung n ay greater than o i-ano pala natin para safe. So this is less than or equal. Okay? Kasi yung m tsaka n natin ay greater than or equal to large N. So ibig sabihin, kung mas malaki yung m, let's say mas malaki yung m sa large N, then yung magiging fraction niya kapag napunta sa denominator, magiging mas malaki yung 1 over n. Same reason sa ating small n, kung magiging mas malaki yung value niya sa large N, then kapag nilagay natin sa fraction yan, nilagay natin sa denominator or yung reciprocal niya, magiging mas maliit yung 1 over small n dito sa 1 over large N. Okay? Kaya ang gagawin natin, this is less than or equal to 1 over n plus 1 over n. And this is less than, since yung large N ay greater than 2 over epsilon. So this is less than 1 over 2 over epsilon plus 1 over 2 over epsilon. So same reason kanina, no? Kasi kung mas malaki to, ibig sabihin, mas maliit yung reciprocal niya kaysa dito sa ating 2 over epsilon. And etong 2 over epsilon, pwede mo nang iangat dito yung epsilon. So this is equal sa epsilon over 2 plus epsilon over 2. And this is equal to epsilon. Okay? So as you can see, for all m n greater than or equal to large N, yung distance must be less than epsilon. So this is done. By the way, i-conclusion pala natin. Lagyan natin yung conclusion. So therefore, 1 over n element of set of natural number is Cauchy. So done. Okay? So ganun lang kasimple. So proceed tayo sa another example. Okay, so let's have number 3. Prove that the sequence sine 1 over n is a Cauchy sequence. Okay, so let's start with our discussion. So for discussion, by the way, bago tayo magsimula, i-note muna natin. So from trigonometry, alam natin na yung sin x, absolute value ng sin x is always less than or equal to absolute value of x. Okay? So proven na yan and ginagamit na yan since trigonometry. Okay? So gagamitin kasi natin yan dito sa ating proof ng Cauchy sequence or maybe sa ating discussion. Okay, so let's start. Again, simulan natin. Ang goal natin yung absolute value ng a sub n minus a sub n must be less than epsilon. So sisimulan natin dito. Absolute value ng a sub n minus a sub n, this is equal to absolute value of sine 1 over n minus sine 1 over m. Okay? Then by triangle inequality, this is less than or equal to absolute value of sine 1 over n plus absolute value ng negative sine 1 over m. Okay? Then, this is the same as absolute value of sine 1 over n plus absolute value of sine 1 over m. Okay, so same lang yan. Kahit gawin nating positive yan o gawin nating negative kasi naka-absolute value naman. Okay, then mula sa idea na to na sin x, absolute value ng sin x less than or equal to absolute value of x. So ibig sabihin, this is less than or equal to the absolute value of 1 over n. So kumbaga ito yung ating sin x. So naging less than or equal sa x. Okay? So same idea dito. This is absolute value of 1 over m. And since ito ay natural number yung n tsaka m, so pwede natin gawing 1 over n plus 1 over m. Okay? Then hahanap ulit tayo ng natural number n or large n para sa condition na to. So ilet ulit natin na yung 1 over n to be less than epsilon over 2, kalahati ng epsilon, yung isa dito, kalahati ng epsilon. Okay? So then, n is greater than 2 over epsilon. So kapag i-manipulate mo to, So magiging ganito yung itsura niya. So halimbawa, ilagay natin yung 2 dito. So 2 less than n epsilon. Tapos yung epsilon ilagay natin dito. So 2 over epsilon, ito, less than n. So magiging ganyan na siya. Okay? Then by Archimedean property again, choose large n to be greater than 2 over epsilon. Okay? By Archimedean property. Okay, then proceed tayo sa proof. Meron na tayong large n. So for our proof, let epsilon greater than 0 and choose large n to be greater than 2 over epsilon. Then from definition, for all n m greater than or equal to n, the absolute value of a sub n minus a sub n, this is equal to absolute value of sine 1 over n minus sine 1 over m. This is also equal to, by the way, less than or equal to, by triangle inequality, absolute value ng sine over 1 over n plus absolute value of negative sine 1 over m. And this is equal to absolute value of sine 1 over n. Ayan lang din yung ginawa natin kanina. Absolute value of sine 1 over m. Okay. And this is less than or equal to absolute value of 1 over m n plus absolute value of 1 over m. So mula nga to sa idea na yung absolute value ng sine x is less than or equal to absolute value of x. Okay. So yan, and this is less than or equal to absolute value of 1 over n, large n na yan, plus absolute value of 1 over n. Okay, since yung nm ay greater than or equal to large n. So na-explain ko na yung sa part na to kanina. Then this is less than epsilon over 2 plus epsilon over 2 since yung large n natin ay greater than 2 over epsilon. Okay? And this is equal to epsilon. Okay? So, as you can see, for all nm greater than or equal to large n, the distance between a sub n minus a sub n and a sub m becomes smaller than epsilon. So, this proves that the sequence sine 1 over n is a Cauchy sequence. So this is done. Okay, so madali lang siya, no? Yung Cauchy sequence natin.